I'd like to preface this video by saying that this video will mostly focus on the films, notably X-Men First Class and Days of Future Past. Not that I hate everything old or anything, it's just that that's where a lot of the subtext is. However, we will delve into the comics and previous films kind of-ish, maybe. Possibly one of the most iconic couples in all of comic book history, their friendship and resulting conflict has been the center point to several story arcs in the comics, and a main subject in the preceding films. However, many speculate that their friendship goes a lot deeper than just friendship. What brings many to ask the question, are they gay? According to the official X-Men First Class story, this is how it goes. Eric, or Magneto, a child of the Holocaust, has devoted his life to finding and killing this guy named Shaw, Sebastian Shaw, the guy who killed his mother. Eric goes all over the world because he's that way, and in Florida he's found Shaw on a submarine. He tries to use his mutant powers to bring that submarine back to him. But he can't because he sucks. Charles over there, meanwhile, is working with the CIA, and his totally not built up at all seriously love interest, Maura McTaggart, which is totally forced by the way if you didn't get my drift. So Charles feels Eric's devotion out in the water. He's like, damn, this guy is cray, but he gonna die. So Mr. Charles McPerfectface jumps in the water and saves Eric, but this isn't the average meeting.
You can't. You'll drown. You have to let go. I know what this means to you, but you're going to die. Please, Eric, calm your mind.
But it's Charles Xavier. You were in my head. How did you do that? You have your tricks, I have mine. I'm like you. Just calm your mind. I thought I was alone. You're not alone. Eric, you're not alone.
Eric is realizing that he's not the only one in the world, that there's someone else out there like him. And it's not just that. Charles was in his head. They made a mental bond here. Eric stopped his lifelong pursuit of killing the man he's been looking for his entire life when he heard Charles McPerfect's voice. Note here that Charles isn't actually the first telepath Eric meets according to the comics, aka the perfect almighty canon holy bible. But they decided to make it Charles in the movies just to make the bond stronger, or maybe just to make it interesting. Why? Because movie. They straight up wrap their arms around each other. Beautiful. Another way that they divert from the holy bible of canon, Charles and Eric reveal their powers to each other immediately, instead of hiding it from each other like they did in the comics. What I like to point out about the fact that they're telepathically communicating is that this is only one mental conversation, one that they show. At any point during the films, could they be mentally communicating, perhaps a conversation the director doesn't want us to see? Charles and Eric share a lot of those looks. Who knows what they could be saying to each other. Moving on, after they meet, Charles wants Eric to join their little mutant club thing, but Eric's determined on finding Kevin Bacon. Charles doesn't want him to go because they're in love, probably, and Eric isn't so sure.
What do you know about me?
Everything.
Isn't that a little creepy? Wouldn't you be a little, well, what the fuck? But Eric is impartial to it. Charles knows Eric inside and out. Inside and out. So Eric decides to join Charles, which leads to more eye sex, and they begin their journey of finding mutants. Together. And alone. They go across the country together. Alone. They get to know each other, they become friends. And a lot of it is pretty homoerotic. Like looking at the sunset together, looking at the penis together. It makes you wonder, if Charles or Eric were a woman, they would be together automatically like Miss Maura McFrickin' shoved in there. I mean, the supposed love interest of Maura had way less build-up than these two. Hell, even Eric and Raven's story was kind of forced in there, but I digress. They have this scene where Eric is trying to move a satellite, but Charles teaches him something new. All Eric's ever learned is pain and anger, which he uses to fuel his telekinetic powers. Eric thinks that he can't move the satellite because it's too damn big, but Charles McPrettyMouth tells him he can do it. He reaches into Eric's mind for a beautiful memory. He reaches into the farthest depths of Eric's mind Eric seems like a reserved man, a person ashamed of his past and the things he's done. But here Eric is exposing himself completely to Charles, but he just lets Charles do it. Eric hasn't exposed himself like that to Raven, nor has Charles shared an intimate moment like that with Mora. They share a beautiful memory and a beautiful moment.
There's so much more to you than you know. Not just pain and anger. It was good too, I felt it. When you can access all that, you'll possess a power no one can match. Not even me.
And a brilliant thing happens. Eric realizes that he's more than just pain and anger. Charles brought out the best in Eric. How is this not a love story? Jesus Christ! So after the whole funny business with Kevin Bacon and the missiles and more sexual tension, Eric and Charles have a little disagreement, which brings us to the beach divorce. Eric is tired of humans being assholes, because let's face it, humans are assholes. There's a bunch of missiles heading towards them because humans are assholes. Eric uses his powers to take control of the missiles and re-aims them back at the humans. This is where their ideas and upbringings really put a separation between them. Charles jumps on Eric to fight him. Gosh.
I don't want to hurt you. Don't hurt me.
He doesn't want to hurt Charles. He cares about Charles. He loves Charles. He knows that he just doesn't agree with him. He tries even in his last moments with Charles to bring them together.
Us turning on each other. It's what they want. I tried to warn you, Charles. I want you by my side. We're brothers, you and I. All of us together, protecting each other. We want the same thing.
Eric is holding Charles in his arms like a lover. They're crying. They're about to leave each other. They love each other, and they're saying goodbye because they know it won't work out. Divorce. After all the cray-cray, Charles and Mora kiss, and it's the most expected unwanted force crap in the history of unwanted force crap. And the movie ends all edgy with Eric becoming Magnet Man. In the next movie, Days of Future Falafel, Peter Dinklage makes all these robots that suck and he hates mutants and crap, and the robots kill mutants. In the future, these robots become freaking advanced as fuck, and the whole world's gone to shit. Charles and Magneto are in the future together, as they are now lovers, or friends. But it's probably lovers, I mean, come on. They decide to send Wolfman back in time to stop the Cray by finding Charles and stopping Blue Girl from becoming Mystique.
You'll need me as well.
And for no reason, Magneto says that Wolverine has to find the younger version of himself to help. Why did he suddenly say that? Is it because the writers were too lazy to write it in another way? Maybe. Probably actually. Or maybe Magneto wants to make sure he and Charles find a way to fall in love, or to be friends, or something less interesting. To make this video shorter, Wolverine goes back and finds Charles, and needs to find a way to convince Charles to break Eric out of prison because he killed JFK? Wolverine explains the crazy backstory and why he needs Charles, and he says that they're gonna need Eric as well, and Charles gets pissed off because the X's are a rough subject.
That's it? You're just gonna walk out?
Oh, top marks. Like I said, you are perceptive.
The professor I know would never turn his back on someone who lost their path. Especially someone he loved.
What does this mean exactly? Is Wolverine talking about Eric? That Charles shouldn't turn his back on Eric just because he lost his way? Because he loves Eric and shouldn't turn his back on him? He loves Eric? Loves. So then Charles goes upstairs to be all emo and whiny, and comes back down and says that he'll do it. For Raven. Then Charles says,
You think you can convince Raven to change? To come home? That's splendid. But what makes you think you can change him?
Because you and Eric sent me back here together.
Eric and Charles sent him there together. Charles is given hope for the future in this moment, that perhaps they're together in the future, as friends, as lovers, nevertheless together. So that convinces Charles. He's set. They go to get the most awesomest guy ever that disappears after a few seconds, and go find Eric. The first thing Charles does when he sees Eric...
Charles.
Eric doesn't fight back. He usually would though, like when Charles attacked Eric on the beach or whatever, but Eric just takes it because I guess he knows he's an asshole. And then, just look at the eye sex. God save us all. Eric and Charles board a plane and just like ex-lovers get into a quarrel.
You abandoned me! You took her away and you abandoned me!
Charles is so distraught. He's angry. Maybe not angry with Eric, but the fact that he left Charles. Eric, who he loved so dearly, abandoned Charles. Eric took some of what meant most to him, his sister, his friends, and their love. Now that's what I call subtext becoming text. Now at the end of the movie, Charles and Eric are splitting ways again. They've defeated the bad guy, and they're not on horrible terms, I guess. But there's an important detail. Eric leaves behind his helmet. If you don't know because yay you, the purpose of that helmet is so that Charles can't read into Eric's mind anymore. Their mental connection was something that brought he and Charles together. It's how Charles showed Eric how great he could be. But Eric then put his helmet on as a barrier. The helmet became a barrier between them and their relationship, even as a symbol. Leaving behind this object shows that maybe the barrier is gone. We know that it gets resolved in the end, as Eric doesn't have his helmet in the alternate future. But now we're seeing Eric leave his helmet earlier. Earlier, so that the relationship could develop.
All those years wasted fighting each other, Charles. To have a precious few of them back.
A relationship we might get to see in the future movies. Eric's helmet being used to deflect Charles' mindfucks is not an idea that was explored in the comics. It was a creation of the movies. It's using it as a device. He's letting Charles back in. And it's not a nitpicky thing either that I'm reading too much into. Sir Ian McKellen had something to say about it as well. "And I don't wear a helmet," said McKellen. "And if you think about that, why doesn't Magneto wear a helmet in this movie? That's a clue to what's going on in the movie." You know what's great? Sir Ian McKellen also kind of thinks that Eric and Charles should bang. He hasn't been given a love line, which I think is a pity. It would be wonderful if the camera hovered over to Magneto's bed to discover them making love to Professor X. Which brings me to my final point. Real life. Who really is against this couple? The actors seem comfortable with it.
Wait a minute, stop everything for a minute, mate. Whoever's creating this artwork, I applaud your artistry, by the way. It's beautiful work. But if anybody's given...
They've said before that it seems like a love story to them.
You guys have described your character as kind of a love story between you two. You think there's a love story element to it, and the fans see it as well.
The writers seem okay with it. Take this quote from the writer and producer of X-Men Apocalypse, Simon Kinberg. If First Class was Eric's story, and Days of Future Past is Charles' story, then Apocalypse will be both of their stories. The first movie was about Eric becoming empowered. That's the origin story of a man's power. Days of Future Past is about a guy who was a mess, masterminding the end of this massive movie. So, they are both at the peak of their powers at the start of Apocalypse. So Apocalypse, for me, is culmination of that 3-act love story. Furthermore, Bryan Singer is a gay man who wants to see more representation of gay people in the media. Hell, the whole franchise is a metaphor for gay rights.
Have you tried not being a mutant?
Here's one of the writers, Zach Steins, on the matter. I helped write the movie, and I can tell you the gay rights / post-Holocaust Jewish identity / civil rights allegory stuff was put in there on purpose. Joss Whedon designed the whole Cures storyline in the comic books specifically as a gay allegory, and Bryan Singer wove his own feelings of outsiderdom as a gay man into the movie series. The whole "have you ever tried not being a mutant" coming out scene in X2 is even particularly subtle, while it is effective. The people working on these movies are all staunchly in the favor of LGBT rights, and honestly, if you don't see the homoerotic elements in them, then what's wrong with you? I wouldn't be surprised if in the new movie Eric and Charles got together. Okay, maybe a little, but it's really not that shocking. I also wouldn't be surprised if this whole thing wasn't just some whole queer bait that never got resolved. That's usually what happens when two men have a lot of sexual tension in movies, or TV, or real life. It's sad, but it happens all the time. Eric and Charles is a really strong couple with a lot of potential and history to it. Are they gay, though? Or just really close friends with a whole lot of sexual tension?
Years wasted fighting each other, Charles. To have a precious few of them back.
Perhaps the precious moments that were robbed of them are the ones that are now going to come true in the new movies. A love that could have been. Are they gay? You decide.